constructive knowledge. Well, nowadays it doesn't take much to go and to find evidence of that we need evidence-based reasoning and evidence-based epistemology. It was just a random thing I took in November 20 New York Times, which said that during the last 3 months of the US presidential campaign, the 20 top fake news stories on Facebook generated more engagement, shares, likes, comments than 20 top stories from real news websites. The millions of people were taken in by the fake news stories. Among the top ones was that when the Pope endorsed Trump. It was the fake news #1, and the second top was Hillary sold weapons to ISIS. So under these conditions, trusting such claims that F holds without sufficient or truth-making evidence of F is clearly not appropriate. It's rather clear. A year ago now, it's just apparent. Appallingly apparent. So these are numerous similar observations support a case for the evidence-based epistemology. We're no longer satisfied here in that F holds. We need evidence, and we need the evidence that this evidence is truth-making. And this is exactly what Brouwer suggested, as it was properly cited as a stroke of genius many, many years ago. The fundamental Brouwer's approach to the notion of truth is that a statement is true if we have a proof of it. And this is just a direct quote from the Constructivism Mathematics by Truth and Darwin. And the social context proofs can be regarded as appropriate truth-making justifications. Because right now we're in the process of extending the basic, the domain of intuitionistic reasoning from mostly mathematical and mostly rigorous to social context. And in this social context, instead of proof, we use a more neutral or more general truth-making justifications name. So the Brouwer's approach requires that a statement is true if you have a truth-making evidence of it. We also adopt a well-established view of constructive knowledge as a result of verification. And in this respect, constructive knowledge is different from constructive truth, and we'll elaborate on this. What we'll try to analyze by formal means, and informal too, there's the well-known Plato paradigm, quote unquote, that justified true belief yields knowledge, which was plainly rejected by the classical examples in classical epistemology, examples by Russell and Gettier, which we discuss here. And as a result, we come with a formal system which we call Intuitionistic epistemic logic, IEL. It's a joint work with the Tudor Probopescu. I hope he's in the room. Tudor, are you here? Yes. This way. So the greatest contrast. So JTB, justified true belief account of knowledge, Edmund Gettier. This is a long quote, if you wish. The various attempts have been made in recent years to state sufficientness and sufficient conditions for knowledge. And the Gettier formulated the Plato paradigm as one, P is, S knows P as an agent, is the agent knows P if P is true, S believes that P, S is justified in believing that P. And then Gettier provides counterexamples too, and thank you for several more minutes. We had to make time by finishing early. It's 10 o'clock. Yeah. But we're already warming up for the real. Thank you.
Yeah.
So before moving further, we have to discuss this awareness issue. So it's clear that within the intuitionistic paradigm, we're considering proofs as the truth-making evidence for propositions. And there are two distinct approaches to this one, to the awareness issue. The proofs, the Heiting, Dummett, and others, we call it traditional intuitionism. They have that proofs are available to the agent. And there are good quotes supporting this issue. Some other authors, as Kravitz and Martindale, they assume that proofs are timeless, Platonic entities floating somewhere in the universe without necessarily being attached to the agent. And we can treat both, but for the sake of being precise enough for this talk, we'll stick to the traditional formally understanding that proofs are the objects available to the agent. Because otherwise you have to change the terminology a little bit, though the mathematical results there will not suffer. They will stay as they are. So what we do, we argue that within a Intuitionistic setting, from a Intuitionistic point of view, Brouwer's point of view, if you wish, justified true belief indeed yields knowledge. This sounds quite unusual for classical epistemologists, as well as I hope some of the conclusions further down in the talk. So the claim here, with the proper reading of justified true belief. So the point is that if you read the justified true belief properly, you end up with a claim which supports what is at least attributed to Plato. And these conditions of proper readings of JTB, the truth should be understood as supported by conclusive truth or proof-making justification. Call it P, that's a Brouwer paradigm. That justified should mean that the justification P is available to the agent and is recognized by the agent as such. Because you might have it in your pocket, but without recognizing that it's indeed the proof you need. And the third thing, which is also important, it's also supported by the necessity, which is supported by the corresponding Russell example, is that the belief should mean the agent's belief is based on this particular justification P, and not some extraneous evidence. There are good examples that if you ignore this number 3, you fail badly. So we'll discuss these examples later, but with these assumptions 1, 2, and 3, which are just explication, or just would make this assumption more rigorous, if you wish, this informal implication JTB yields knowledge actually holds. Yes, the result of justification, regards of citation. Yes. Let's go to, oops. I'm afraid I'm stuck. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should point at, it looks like the battery is not ideal, but I should point not to the screen, not to myself, not the audience. Okay, it's another inspirational example to connect it to mathematicians. When mathematicians solve, I hope that if you consider the type theory and this fancy reincarnation of type theory, which is the Voevodsky style type theory as a foundational enterprise in mathematics, then they have what is Voevodsky called truncated proposition, or his predecessors also called the squash type, monotype, or bracket types. I and H in A, stating that type A is inhabited, it has a proof. And truncated types may be inhabited true without providing a specific witness for inhabit of A itself. And this is our vision of Intuitionistic knowledge. We claim that A holds without providing specific evidence of it. But we have an evidence that A holds. That we have an evidence for this. And that's the reading. So this is a well-known Brouwer, Heiting, Kolmogorov semantics. The cases, they explain how the proof of compound formula goes with giving proofs of the components. In particular, the bullet number 3 is a proof of A implies B consists of a construction, which given a proof of A returns a proof of B. There are well-known cases, I won't stand in there. But this is the heart of a constructive reasoning at the propositional level. And what we suggest doing is when we add a new connective to this set of Intuitionistic connectives, which is K, the knowledge operator K, which is the modality. And the BHK style clause for K is the proof of KA is conclusive evidence that A has a proof. know that this evidence of A that A has a proof does not necessarily deliver the proof of A explicitly. And this is the, and it's not a technicality of the principal feature. The bird's eye view of the whole story is we take the principle Ka is equivalent to A, which nobody likes. I mean, nobody means classical epistemologists along with Intuitionistic epistemologists, they deny it. But they deny it by different reasons. Well, first of all, on the psychological level, of course, nobody wants this, because otherwise the notion of Intuitionistic truth, or Intuitionistic knowledge, sorry, will be immediately trivialized. It's just A itself. So each should find the direction, at least one, which they do not endorse. So the classicists deny co-reflection, A implies Ka. Of course, from the classical point of view, if A is true, it doesn't mean that A is known. But endorses the factivity of knowledge, or reflection principle, A implies A. And we argue that within the BHK, from the BHK point of view, it's the other way around. Co-reflection should be endorsed, and that's another thing which a classical epistemologist logician will be probably appalled to hear. But this is a rather clearly, it clearly follows from the BHK approaches. Because, of course, the idea is that the proof yields knowledge. And if you look through the whole history of understanding of the proof, then it's overwhelming. Wherever you go in the common sense reasoning, mathematics, computer science, where the computer-aided proofs for the proofs are the ideal verification tools. So you have a proof of cause, you verify the thing. And among the intuitionists, the idea of a constructive proof is often treated as synonyms for verification. So what it goes, the proof check and yields validity of the co-reflection. If A holds, let me do the reasoning, then by Brouwer, A has to have a truth-making proof or truth-making evidence. And by our assumptions, this truth-making evidence should be available to the knower. And if the proof is available to the knower, then it doesn't take much to construct, to proof check it, and then to construct the evidence that you have a proof, hence that A is known. It's like going from a specific witness in the first order logic to the existential quantifier. Very easy move. If you have a witness, of course, the existential quantifier, that there is a proof also clearly holds. So from this constructive perspective, we have to endorse the co-reflection. A implies Ka. What about reflection then? We don't want to be in the trap of trivializing knowledge. Clearly there should be something wrong with the reflection. And we argue that in the intuitionistic setting, or constructive knowledge setting, this should be resisted as a general principle. And the immediate example comes from mathematics. If you have a witness of a truncated type, you have a proof that type is inhabited. It doesn't give you the proof of A itself. Like you have a proof that there exists a proof. That doesn't mean that you have a proof, generally speaking. And reflection fails in a broader context as well. So let's do the runs through the examples. Zero knowledge protocols. This is one of the favorites in computer science. The whole idea of zero knowledge protocols that you convey the sense, the message that A holds, without giving any evidence of A. That's the whole point of the whole thing, and it works. Testimony to the authority, take Fermat's theorem. An educated mathematician can claim it's known, whereas most cannot produce its proof. You can easily generalize it to other circumstances related to mathematics. Highly probable truth is you run some probabilistic algorithm which delivers you, supports the claim that A holds with a cosmologically small probability of error. So it exceeds all reasonable criteria of truth, but you might not have a proof in some BHK sense. Existential generalization, something as And somebody stole your wallet in subway. And you have all the evidence of it. The wallet is gone, your backpack has a cut in the corresponding pocket, and you have no idea who did this. You definitely know that there exists X, that somebody stole it. So X stole my pockets. And so K, you know this. K, there exists X holds. But intuitionistically, if you have the knowledge that there exists X, S of X, then the threshold is high. You have to deliver the evidence. You have to deliver the guy who did it and prove that that's the guy who did this. We're nowhere near this point. But still we claim that we know that somebody stole it. Classified sources. No need to go further. Your boss has his own knowledge base, which you're deliberately kept away from, and he says, that's what here A goes. You're nowhere near the proof that A holds, but you accept it. So the classical reflection fails intuitionistically, and knowing that having evidence that you know A doesn't necessarily provide you the evidence of A. But you have to be strict in reading all these small funny symbols intuitionistically or constructively. If you're half-away intuitionist, half-away classicist, you may end up with some confusion, which you're not wanting. So what about reflection in general? So do we give up the basic assumption of epistemology that false propositions cannot be known? No. But the analysis shows that the sticking to reflection as it looks, K implies A, was neutral classically, but it is a mistake intuitionistically. What are other ways to express this? You can read them. Read the first two, obviously. It's not the case that A is known and false simultaneously. Or if A is false, that's number two, then it cannot be known. And others of the same caliber. It includes double negation, which is a little bit too specific maybe for most of the audience. So we'll stick to the first two, but mathematically we have 5. We claim that they're all, the 1 to 4, they're all classically equivalent to the classical reflection K. The reflection K implies A. But intuitionistically, the reflection K implies is too strong. Way too strong, as we see according to the Brouwer hiding column of semantics. So we are free to pick the condition the false, the intrinsic reflection the false cannot be known, but we had to take them from one of these 1 to 4 equivalent assumptions. They're all indeed equivalent, so we're free to pick one. And actually number 5 in presence of co-reflection is also equivalent to the other 5. So you're free to pick the one, and naturally we pick the one which looked more appealing for us, just socially or culturally. So Ka implies double negation of A. And those who are familiar with Intuitionistic logic understand that double negation of A is much weaker than A itself. And in a way, not A, double negation is a way to model classical logic inside Intuitionistic logic. So for the sake of this mostly social discussion, we may look at not A as a classical, A holds classically. That's a good approximation. So it means that Ka, so A is known that A holds classically. Well, in classical logic, you will never notice the difference. That's why the classical epistemology is all right with respect to this principle. But intrinsically, we are more responsible. We want to keep track of evidence, at least at the level of language where available. So that's what we do. So this is the table, the sum map table. So there are 2 principles, as I mentioned: reflection, co-reflection. Classical knowledge endorses reflection, rejects co-reflection. Intrinsic logic endorses co-reflection and replaces classical reflection with intuitionistic reflection, the role of Ka implies double negation. So here's a shiny white armor. This is the IL, intrinsic epistemic logic. So we take, of course, all the principles of intrinsic proposition of intrinsic logic. We take the usual normality condition, and then there is a co-reflection. A implies Ka, and the intrinsic reflection Ka implies double negation. So the rule, modus ponens, you ask, where is the citation? This is for specialists. It just follows from the assumptions. So it's a normal model logic, and our E equals C squared here is the chain of two implications. A implies Ka, so intrinsic truth or constructive truth yields knowledge, which in turn yields not A. So before we introduced K into the language, we had only the transitive implication that A implies double negation of A. That's what everybody knows about intrinsic logic. And now we have something in between that captures the nuances of evidence-based reasoning, the knowledge thing. Of course, we have to do the modeling, and yes, I'm glad that Sol made it here in time, because as we're discussing. So the Kripke models, of course, the whole thing. So we have to take the Kripke models for intrinsic logic. This is a WR forcing, and we equip it with a binary relation E, which reflects the knowledge component. So so we have two accessibility relation. Y is a cognitive. The one is intuitionistic, thanks to Sol, and the other one is E. We add the knowledge component. So the E worlds, the worlds which are accessible from given world U, are the bullet number 2, or the item number 2. They're a subset of all possible worlds. If you're in the world U, then you have some metaphysical possibilities which are reflected in the world R of U. But then subset may be proper, maybe the whole thing. A subset of this set of all possible worlds is what we call audit set. And this is my esteemed co-author suggestion. We'll call it audit sets. That's the one which we take measurements which are feasible, which we make measurements and conclude that our knowledge is based on the evidence we had within this U. And of course, it's monotonic as well as in the time going, the process of cognition, our metaphysical possibility, the world of metaphysical possibility shrinks, and the same holds for the audit sets. So, and this is the audit set ideology. For a given world U, this is halfway through this slide already. So A is known if and only if A holds an all audit set possible at U. The fact that E of U is not empty guarantees that, of course, no false statements can be verified, because if statements should false, it should false everywhere in the world, so it should false even in the world which audit set provides the thing. And this is a baby model. If you hit the right spot, then all your conclusions and first examples should be really, really easy to understand, to comprehend, and to get the idea suggested. So immediately, well, it goes without mentioning that of course we have soundness and completeness with respect to this semantics. Yes, so we use it freely. So there is a counter model for KP implies P. So you need two worlds, 1 and 2, and the audit set for both is the singleton 2. That's the point where you make your reading before you're making the judgment whether you know it or not. And it is pretty clear that in the world 1, KP holds, because you measure the knowledge of P at 1, actually in whether or not P holds at 2. This tells you that at 2 everything is all right, so accept the knowledge, whereas indeed P doesn't hold at 1. So this is a mathematical easy counterexample, but of course, if you want to, you just expand this picture to your real favorite world and your favorite epistemic set, and you'll get the general picture. Well, some natural properties, we already have through all these slides. I just mentioned the bullet number 3, or the last one. If we have an intuitionistic or the finite model, so we are in the lift notes, or we knew everything we could possibly know, then it's a classical world. It's well-known case. Then if you reach the lift world in crypto model, then your logic becomes classical, in particular double negation holds. And well, what happens with the KA? Then, of course, the audit set ought to be the same leaf. So your knowledge also becomes classical. And the reflexivity holds, of course. Sounds completeness already over there. So these are the consequences. That's the tautologies and this new epistemic constructive logic. So the reflection for negated formulas holds. Well, nobody's that much surprised with the Klivenko theorem in mind. Yes, there's something, but it catches it perfectly. The knowledge and negation commute. It shows that how strong the negation is in the decision context. The disjunction property, without which we wouldn't endorse the system as a brand of Intuitionistic logic, but it does hold. And the disjunction property for verifications. So if you verify disjunction, then you verify other one, or just you verify one. These are the properties which are mathematically, which are mathematical consequences of the assumptions we made, in this logic. Well, I want some time about this. Yes. Now let's discuss Gettier cases. This is for epistemologists in the room. So this is a classical example why JTB, justified true belief, doesn't yield knowledge. Classically, this example number 2, it's just, there are 2 examples. Number 1 is a little of redundancies. We'll go with example number 2, and we'll also strip off some redundancy there too. So it's a simplified version, but the logical structure remains the same. So suppose that Smith has strong evidence that Jones owns a fort, and Smith constructs the proposition, either Jones owns a fort or Brown is in Barcelona. There was something in Brest-Litovsk or something. We'll strip it off. Yeah. So entailed by A, because it's disjunction with the one of disjunct is the Jones idea. But imagine now that Jones doesn't own a fort, and entirely unknown to Smith, Brown is in Barcelona. Then Smith does not know that B is true, even though B is indeed true, and Smith does believe that B is true, and Smith is justified in believing that B is true. This is a famous Gettier example which shocked the epistemic world, 1963. And yeah. So logically, what we do, F is a proposition Jones owns the fort, B Brown is Barcelona, and we compose H with a disjunction F and B, and one of the disjunct F is justified, but B is true, but this justification has nothing to do with the truth hold of B. So that's why, within this example, justified true belief doesn't yield knowledge. But intuitionistically, there is no truth maker for B available to Smith. So that we cannot claim that B is known to Smith. Well, that B is true, sorry. Another example is the Russell's example, which I like probably more. If a man believes the late Prime Minister's last name began with a B, he believes that it's true since the late Prime Minister was Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman. You can argue whether it starts with a B or C, but I follow Brouwer's reading, it's a B. In the original notation, it should be a dash in between, so it should start with a C, but who am I to argue with Brouwer? Well, let's start with Russell in this respect. So, but if he believes that Mr. Balfour was the late Prime Minister, he'll still believe that the late Prime Minister's last name began with a B. Yes. So we take the proposition B, the late Prime Minister start name with a B. In this scenario, a man concludes that B by believing that Mr. Balfour is the late Prime Minister. So B is a justified true belief, but not knowledge, because there's a true statement B, and the two evidence two pieces of evidence, the right one and the wrong one. The right one with the truth-making evidence, by some accident or by some bad judgment, the agent takes the other one as a basic for his belief, and that's why it's not knowledge, because there's a mismatch between them. Yes, that's what I've said. True proposition and two pieces of justification. One is truth-making, another one is not. This analysis, which basically shows that if you have a proof in your pocket, but still you do not base your judgment, your belief on this particular one, you base it on some extraneous evidence, then justified true belief is not a valid assumption. So this is it shows that the condition number 3 in the original slide was necessary. But this analysis, which traces the evidence, actually takes the justification logic, which you kindly mentioned, on the higher level. Because if you try to express it with just modalities, we take the natural way would be to go T of F. So modality T is that F is supported by a truth maker, and J of F saying the agent has a justified belief than P. And just to say there is a conjunction of two evidence, so F has a truth maker, Brouwer saying, and J is justified for the agent, it's not enough, because in one case you speak about one truth-making evidence, in another case it's another truth evidence. It's like having two existential quantifiers, which doesn't guarantee that the witness you pick for each of them is the same one, but you have to do everything. You have to track the evidence to the individual level. You have the justification logic to do the evidence tracking, and then you'll get the full account of what's going on. And so there's the findings. The Gettier and Russell examples are perfect illustrations that the four-method assumptions cannot be ignored. And that's it. Thank you very much.
We have 5 minutes for questions, remarks. Yes?
Can you also deal with cases of epistemic luck, like the barn county and similar examples?
Yeah, is that understood?
Yes, perfectly understood.
Maybe you can repeat the question.
No, that's fine. I'm glad Sol is in the audience too. It's a red barn example. You can analyze it. And you can, and this is if you look at my paper, Review of Symbolic Logic, you just click at this. This is the paradigmatic. That's example number 1. It shows that if you trace the justifications, that there's no paradox disappears, because in the red barn example and on the barn county examples, you have the belief from the observation that it's a barn, which is not actually supported by the truth maker.
No, it is. That's the point.
That's the point. You have two things.
Yeah.
The destruction is the belief you just observe, and then you observe it's a red barn. And you do the conclusion that since there are no red barns around, then it ought to be a barn. So you have two statements which are the same within a model language. It's a belief. You believe that it's a barn because you observe it, and you believe because you calculated that it should be a barn because it's a red and things. And if you see the evidence, they're different. The first one is just observation evidence, and the second one is a compound justification term which came from the reasoning that it's indeed a red barn. So if you relate these two occurrences of the modality, which with its own evidence, with the justification, one is populated with this, which is not truth-making, just observe, it's a barn. In another one, it's a truth-making because you make an observation. So within the model language, they glue together, so you cannot distinguish them, you cannot analyze. That's how the confusion comes about. But then, if you do the evidence tracking, it falls apart. It's perfectly just discussed in details in the paper, 2008.
You mentioned you have a proof of soundness and completeness.
Yes.
With respect to the models you've shown.
Yes.
Is it a constructive proof of completeness?
The same way, it's basically the same proof as for Intuitionistic propositional logic. It is constructive. You can do it. You can do the cut elimination, and you can do it as constructive as you wish. And it's a finite model property.
Further?
You said that for Brouwer and Martin L.E.J, proofs are timeless Platonic entities. Is that a belief or knowledge?
Let me answer the same way you framed your question. It's knowability. It means it's possible to know A within certain appropriate conditions. If the evidence is floating around, it doesn't mean that there's no evidence, it's somewhere, but if you somehow get access to it. But if you somehow get access, it's probably should be represented by the diamond as the possibility, the metaphysical possibility. So I would say that in this timeless entity, the epistemic notion you're modeling is not knowledge K, but diamond K. So it's possible to know. But some people mix this too. But if you look at our system, then it's the same sets of axioms which deals with the knowability than with knowledge.
Further questions?
So your second accessibility relation will also support the definition of E-implication. So does that reduce to the knowledge of ordinary implication? And if not, would you think that it would have some application?
I will not take your time and to say I have to think about this. Just let me. I don't know the answer immediately.
Better.
I'm curious in the ontological status of these truth makers.
Yes.
It seems to me on first sight that there must be a lot of intentionality which I don't recognize in your model based on these evidence sets, which are just a subset of the possible worlds which are accessible. So how do you cope with this intentionality?
Let me answer the question as I understood it. Yes, because in intuitionistic logic, there are two competing or supplementing each other semantics from the capital letter. One is the BHK semantics, and then you build in evidence, and it's a hard job to do, to track the evidence. And you remain touch clean realizability as part of the same world of evidence-based reasoning, and the semantics is evidence-based. There's another approach which is due to Saul Kripke, which I'm really happy to see in the audience, with that knowledge is represented, the intrinsic truth is represented by the truth hold in all the metaphysical possibilities. And so it's a cognition process, and it's certainly A holds if it holds in all the possible worlds there. They're not directly related, except that the closest relation between Kripke semantics and BHK semantics goes through the Brouwer or the Heiting axiom system. You go to the axiom system, then you go back to the BHK semantics. There are, it was before the justification logic appears. Now we have a rather constructive and clear way to connect these two readings, Kripkean and evidence-based or justification, or Brouwer's reading, the original reading, through all sorts of justification models. You can do it directly, but it's too complicated and too heavy technically to be represented in such a short talk. So we have answers, but so it's what you see is the tip of the iceberg. But we're pretty much aware of what's underwater.
I would like to continue. Thank you very much, Professor Artemov.
So I'm happily surrendering.
You'll have to.